You are now tuned into the 2-Minute Warning, a live stream community conversation pertaining to social and political issues and how we can collectively resolve them. Powered by the Westside Gazette.
Good evening and welcome to the Westside Gazette's 2-Minute Warning. I'm your host, Bobby R. Henry Sr., and I'll be joined by our distinguished host, Attorney Sandra Cherfrere. And I might have misspoke that name, but I do apologize. However, she'll be joining us with a special guest, and we're going to talk about something that's really been hot on everybody's lips and in the news here lately for the past few days, and especially today as that big ugly bill has been passed. And I want to start the show off by first congratulating John Warren of the San Diego View newspaper out in California, who is now the chairman of the NNPA. So congratulations, John, and to your cabinet. I know you're going to do some great things, because there's no greater place to be than in the news, and that news being Black-owned media. So congratulations, John. Now, as we get ready for tonight's show, I see that we do have one of our, I'm still trying to figure this thing out as we go along. Okay, as our topic we deal with tonight is border crisis from TPS to Alligator Alcatraz, America's 2-minute warning. And as we dive a little further, I want us to really think about what is transpiring here. As America teeters on the edge of a humanitarian and moral breakdown, we're sounding the alarm. From the stripping of TPS, temporary protective status, protection, to the rise of makeshift detention camps like the Florida so-called Alligator Alcatraz. This is more than a policy debate. It's a battle for the soul of our nation. This is a borderline crisis. Again, from TPS to Alligator Alcatraz. This is America's 2-minute warning. Okay. Now, I know that there is a lot going on, and I'm trying to see if our host is in the studio. Okay, she hasn't joined us yet. However, I want to just talk a little bit about what is going on. And I know that there are a lot of you who are just as concerned as I am. There's a saying that, from the cops show, what you gonna do when they come for you? And it seems like they're coming for all of us. I know that the German Protestant, Neil Moeller, who said in a very famous statement, first they came for the socialists, and nobody said anything. And then they came for some other folk, and nobody said anything. And finally, they came for him, and there was nobody to speak for him. And I do believe that we are about to find ourselves in a similar situation if we don't begin to speak up for each other. The need for solidarity is now more than, and I know we say this all the time, more than ever. But brothers and sisters and cousins, nieces and nephews, if we don't find some people to stand and fight with us, we will soon find ourselves trying to fight to stay alive in another country or in another habitat, if you will. There is, as it pertains to that big ugly bill, the fact that our programs, food programs, Medicare, Social Security, everything that we hold near and dear to us, we may find ourselves stripped from it. And then what are we going to do? What are we going to do? That is the question. Um, I'm still figuring out where do we go from here. Uh, our host over on the West Coast, Mr. Busby, is dealing with an issue over there, okay, as well as we are dealing with it here. All right, I'm still trying to find my place here. All right, here we go. Let me do this. I hate dead air too. Unfortunately, things happen. Okay. I'm going to ask the producer, if you will, for a moment.
You see what I see.
Okay. Well, let's do this. Our special guest for tonight will be our state representative, Ms. Dottie Joseph. Dottie has made history in itself within our legislature. I wanted the attorney to introduce her and speak more concerning the progress she's made. So, without further ado, let's bring on our state representative, history-making state representative, Ms. Dottie Joseph. Good evening, Dottie.
Good evening, everybody. It is so great to see you. I'm actually here with Sandra. We are at a town hall that is still going on, but I am a woman of my word. If I say I'm going to do something, I'm doing it. So
Okay.
there's a lot going on. So I'm going to talk
Yeah.
about some things happening at the state level. I'm going to jump down to what's going on at the local level, and then we're going to talk about some of the federal impact. At the state level, we just concluded the legislative session. It's normally just 60 days, but it got extended a whole extra 45 days to deal with the budget. I was one of two House reps to vote against the budget. And the reason I voted against the budget was the money allocated to basically terrorize immigrants. There was monies added to private prisons, which disproportionately impacts the Black community. We also had additional monies allocated that weren't allocated for affordable housing, that should have been allocated to affordable housing. We had monies that didn't go to healthcare, that could and should have gone to healthcare. Florida is one of the few states that has not expanded Medicaid. So these are some of the things that we've been fighting at the state level. But as you know, since we're talking about the budget, just today they passed the terrible budget bill that is the largest wealth transfer in this country's history, since actually the largest of the lower middle and income people to the super rich, to just offset tax cuts. If you need me to get into more of that, I can, but I don't want to make that the focus. So that's in terms of the budget. In terms of Alcatraz, I don't know if you want me to run through it, or if you want to ask me different questions.
Yeah, hold tight for a minute. I see we got Attorney Sandra in the back. Let's bring Sandra on the screen. Okay.
Yep,
All right.
she is.
Okay.
So when I come up to mute.
Okay, Sandra. You're on.
Hi, good evening, everybody. Just as Dottie said, we were at another event because of when they terminated TPS, we did an event, and now the community has asked for us to show up. So we're doing another one in Pembroke Pines tonight. It's wrapping up. Thanks for the opportunity again, Bobby, to be here, because it's so much to do. It's something every day, and we have to keep finding different ways to be in this fight.
Okay, let's do this.
Thank you for having me again.
Oh, absolutely. I figured that between you two, we can really get some answers, or perhaps understand a little more what's happening with this TPS. What is TPS?
You want to take that, Dottie, or you want me to take it? Okay, so I'll take that since I am a bit of a practitioner. So TPS is something that's called temporary protected status. And if you hear the people who are against it, they keep saying like, that's right, it's temporary. So they should know it's going to come to an end. But it's not supposed to come to an end until the conditions that warranted coming into existence no longer exist, right? But in the case of Haiti, the condition that caused it for them to be granted TPS continue to exist, right? And not only that, the country has actually gotten worse since TPS was granted because they haven't had elections in Haiti since 2016, is my understanding. Some people said 2020. I'm like, I don't remember that one. I believe it was since 2016 since they've had an election. Now it's run by a group of gangs that decided that they were going to run the country. So you can't tell me that that's a place that's better for it to absorb 500,000 people, including their American and foreign-born children. That just doesn't even make any sense.
Okay, so
And
when
I'll
we
just add that TPS is not something that's unique to Haitians, right? It's a designation that's made. There's an evaluation process made, and usually it's for humanitarian purposes. There's some kind of crisis that's going on. Lots of places have had TPS in the past, including Venezuela and a handful of other places. Traditionally, it has been a status that has continued to be renewed without question, so long as those country conditions still exist, right? And as Sandra was alluding to, in the case of Haiti, those country conditions still exist, right? You still have a lot of the problems with the gangs. Now, mind you, the gangs is not throughout the entire country, but it's in the capital, which is where most people are concentrated. You have, and right now you have a government that's been installed. I don't want to say by the United States, but there's a acting government that was not approved by the people, not voted on by the people, that is handling things. And that government has said that they're willing to accept people back. So if you see where Cubans are being deported, they are being deported, but they're not being sent back to Cuba. Why? Because Cuba has not accepted those people back. The Cuban government's like, nope. So now they have to figure out where they're sending these people, which is why you're finding some Venezuelans being sent to other places like CCOT prison because their country has stood up for them and said, no, we're not doing that. So that's part of where we are right now in terms of
okay,
temporary protected status. It used to be something that was renewed without question, but with the current the current government, they have taken the position that there are certain countries, mostly ones that have a certain hue of skin, are the ones that they do not want to continue renewing.
mhm.
Just
So
like,
how,
for example, Bobby, I can just tell you, like, for example, the country of El Salvador, I think they've had TPS since 1998. So this is not new at all. Montserrat
mhm.
had it because a volcano erupted and pretty much destroyed that island. They had CPS because of that. So this is one of the things that is not very new. This, I believe, when the current president was elected the first time, he's probably the first person I've ever heard to try to take TPS from someone. And because he was unsuccessful then, he came back with a vengeance and has found a way by having a conservative Supreme Court majority, which is not supposed to be a political entity, to go ahead and allow him to do a lot of the unlawful, well, not unlawful, yes, inhumane for sure, things that he's doing.
Okay, well, how would we label the current status of Haitians or under this TPS now? And yeah,
Okay, so you asked, like, how would we label them? So actually, the people who have temporary protected status, they're a mixed bag. So some of those folks have a final order of removal, meaning they had already been ordered deported before. TPS came and gave them some sort of relief to allow them to stay in the United States. There are some people who have an asylum application pending, but they also were eligible for TPS and they applied for TPS because it's also a protection, right? You have some people who may have family members that's applying for residency for them. Some of those petitions take a long time. So, and before they're allowed to work. So temporary protected status was one of the ways in which they could start working sooner instead of waiting on the other case. So the people who have TPS does not fit into one box because it's a range of people with a range of status in a range that has that status. So some of them, once TPS is gone, they're absolutely going to have to leave the United States because they're already ordered deported. But there are some of them that have temporary protected status that will be able to find ways for them to change their status and remain in the United States.
okay, this recent decision by the judge, is that decision extended to TPS until 2026? Does it contradict the Supreme Court's limits on nationwide injunctions, or is this decision more narrowly applied?
So there's a question as to that, right?
Mhm.
That's the short answer to the question is we're not sure, right? Legally, technically, it still applies across the board. We anticipate that the administration will be appealing it, and they have issued information today, basically giving us that information. And there's also a question about how they want to apply the whole question of TPS. So for folks who are not familiar, let me get into that. So the birthright citizenship litigation was deemed that in terms of the substance of the case, uh, they're trying to challenge birthright citizenship. Trump issued an executive order saying that he wanted to get rid of birthright citizenship for certain people, right? And every court that has addressed it has found it to be violative of the Constitution. So that's not even a question. But what they're doing is they're proceeding on it's not on the merits, but on the procedure. They got the Supreme Court to rule that any district court judge can't issue a nationwide injunction. They're claiming that only they have that authority to do, right? So what that means is even though the person has the legal high ground, they are saying that until you yourself get that ruling for yourself as a plaintiff, then it doesn't apply to you. That's the birthright citizenship one. And that for Black people is particularly important because if you don't know, that's how we were able to basically assert our rights as Black people in this country because folks were not trying to allow it. And that's what gave first Black people and then later on Native American people and Asian people access to be full-fledged, not second-class citizens in this country. So if it's an attack on immigrants first, because that's the easiest low-hanging fruit, know that they're coming for Black people next. And when I say Black people, I'm talking about native-born, been here for generations, Black people. Now, what that means, that particular birthright citizenship ruling means no right is protected. We're talking about birthright citizenship. I told you they haven't gotten to the merits yet. What that means is name any right you have protected under the Constitution. They're saying that unless you sue with an attorney yourself, you do not have that protection, which is wild. But that's where we are right now. So to answer your question is we're unsure, but assuming it does, we have some people right now who are looking for plaintiffs so that we can do a class action. So that's another way that you could do it, to do a nationwide class action, which might be done on behalf of all TPS holders, nationwide who are from Haiti, in this particular instance. But in other cases, we're looking at what that means is that the certain attorneys general, we know some are not going to participate, right? But the ones that do have a sense of a real obligation to the Constitution will bring some kind of lawsuit like that on a nationwide basis so that everybody's protected and not every one person doesn't have to sue so that people get rights that we know already exist.
What are some of the real life situations that you guys are witnessing right now or today?
So, Bobby, can I say something about what
Yeah,
Rep. Dottie Joseph just talked
sure,
about?
sure.
So, for me, like I appreciate all the litigation to a certain extent, right? What I'm afraid of with all of the litigation is that we're going to keep creating bad law, right? Because some of that is happening. So we litigate for a good reason, a sound reason, but we've come to see that we have a court that's pretty much going to try to finagle and finesse decisions to kind of give the president what it is that he wants, right? And doing that, you're creating bad law, particularly if it's coming from the Supreme Court of the United States, that impacts the entire country. So I think advocates and these these people who are litigating, they really need to be more careful, is what I would say, and before they make the decision to go ahead and litigate some of these issues, because what we may end up with is a lot of bad law that may be difficult to get rid of, particularly since Supreme Court justices have lifetime appointments. And unless the tenor of the court changes, we may be stuck with that. And I think they need to do a risk analysis on whether or not some of this stuff is worth arguing and whether or not we should just put our resources in a different direction and wait the clown out and see what happens next.
Okay, for people who might not understand, can you give us an example of what you're talking about when you say pick one or not pick one or
No, no,
litigate
just
one.
like,
So,
well, I don't want to get into the pick one, not pick one, but what I'm saying, like, just for example, this whole
mhm,
birthright citizenship where they're trying to say, what Rep. Joseph just explained about, they're saying each individual has to bring a suit, and then once a decision is made, it relates only to them. Like, you don't want things like that to continue to happen. It's always been that if a district court issues an injunction, it implies to the entire United States. You don't want it to be a solid thing that, like courts, that it really becomes the law that
mhm.
now every jurisdiction has to make a decision on a particular issue. You don't want that. That means, like, you can leave Florida and go to Georgia and the law applies differently. You go into Texas, it's a whole different law. So you're pretty much going to be walking around the United States and you don't know what the hell the rules are there. And that's not a united country. That's a whole bunch of different countries trying to pretend that they're one. And that's the part that's concerning to me.
Okay, let's bring it home a little bit. Okay, the question I wanted to ask was, what are some of the real world consequences for families and communities who are caught between this temporary protection status, this decision swinging back and forth?
So what that means is, before we knew a time certain, February 3rd, 2026, of when TPS status would end. What does that mean? We talked about what TPS is. What does it mean? It means that you can't be deported. That's all it means. During that period, you were temporarily protected from being deported, right? There are other ways that the administration could protect these people, but this administration has not chosen to do so. And they have been operating under this whole concept of a replacement theory, right? And under that replacement theory, they're saying Black and brown people are trying to replace us as white people. And as such, we need to diminish the Black and brown population. That's what they're saying. You have footage of Stephen Miller saying that everybody in the US needs to look like him. Well, he don't look like me or you. So
Not at
what's
all.
he talking about? So they are not being shy about what they're asking for. Even when they're instituting a lot of these deportations that we see now, they market it and talk about it as just the criminals, right? Criminals. But we know that most of the people that they're arresting in the past 6 months, or at least since January, have not been the people with criminal convictions, right? These are not people who are quote unquote criminals. And just in case you didn't know, because some people are like, well, just the fact of being undocumented is criminal. No, being undocumented is not a crime. I see you shaking your head, so I'll let her get into that because she's the immigration attorney. I'm not, I'm the advocate. So when we talk about this stuff, we need to understand the games that people are playing. What they're actually doing, if you zoom out, it's not about immigrants. It's about an attack on the 14th Amendment. The 14th Amendment, let me give y'all a quick history lesson in terms of the law. To be a citizen in this country, once slavery ended, the post-Reconstruction constitutional amendments were 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendments, right? 13th supposedly got rid of slavery, but we know that there's an exception for those who are incarcerated, right? And we know that immediately after slavery, they passed these black codes to find excuses to lock up black people to basically keep them in bondage. That's why we have the tipping system right now, because they didn't want to pay people who were recently freed. They wanted you to be nice and still act like a slave so they could decide how much they want to tip you to pay you, right? So those are some of those vestiges. The 14th Amendment is what forced the states to give black people the same rights as everybody else. Without the 14th Amendment, we did not have that. I need you to understand that. It's the Equal Protection Clause. It protects us. It provides for making sure that somebody in one state doesn't have more rights than somebody in another state. So that's basically what the actual attack is about. So I need y'all to understand that. So knowing that that's the actual attack, and people like, well, it's not our business because, Well, you better believe it's their business, because if you're paying attention to how they're doing these raids and these detentions and these terrorizing situations, what they're doing, it's straight racial profiling. And we knew that this was going to happen because every place they've done something similar, that's exactly what happened. First, it happens with black people. Now they're doing it with Hispanic people. And if you're listening, if we were doing just the quote unquote people with any kind of criminal anything, misdemeanors to real crimes, who have been here for decades, it could, and when I say a crime, it could be that you were caught smoking weed when you were in college. That's what I'm talking about. Okay. So it could be, whatever, not serious offenses, nothing that harms whatever. And we're not going to get into all of that. But those people, if we're looking at the numbers, maybe you were talking about just undocumented people. Forget the criminals for a second. Let's just talk about undocumented people, which we know immigrants in general, especially undocumented people, have way less of a criminal history than anybody who's
Can't
native born.
afford it.
Way less, right?
Mhm.
So if we're
Mhm.
looking at just those people, we're talking about 11 million people. But you got Laura Loomer, one of these Trump fanatics, and people who have been starting to confess it within the administration. They said that, Alligator Alcatraz is coming. We got 63 million meals for you. Well, where does 63
Where that come
number
from?
come from? You know what that
Mhm.
63 number represents? It's
Tell
all
us.
the Hispanic people, it's all the Latin American people who are in this country. So they done told on themselves. They're going for everybody who is brown, right? That's
Mhm.
that's who they're targeting. But guess who also gets caught up? Whenever anybody in America is dealing with anything, Black people always catch slack. Now, as Haitian immigrants, right, we also get the dual, right? You get the Black, we get the immigrant attacks, you name it, we got it, right? We got to fight for all that stuff. So that's where we're at right now. The impact is extraordinary, and I don't think people get it. So we're trying to sound the alarm as best as we can, that we're trying to fight. We're fighting legally, but putting aside legal stuff, we need to, as a community, have a real conversation about where we are in this point in history in terms of how we need to protect ourselves, because ain't no cavalry coming, right?
No, you're
We're
right.
not
You're
counting on
right.
any political party. Ain't nobody gonna save us but us.
But
We are the cavalry, right? So
Mhm.
what does that mean? We need to look at tactics that our ancestors have put into place, whether it's things from the Black Panther Party, whether it's making sure that our food is secure, because they're coming in Project 2025. They told us they were coming after the food supply. They were going after the farmers. They were going to try to bankrupt them. So they had to sell their property. So the private equity and all those people take over. We know that they're going to make it so that you have to pay. They want to make it so that you pay to have access to hurricane preventative information. We know there are a lot of things that we know from Project 2025 that they told us they were going to do. This immigrant component is just a piece of Project 2025, from
Okay.
getting rid of people who were resisting in the federal government. They told us they were going to do that. People were like, oh no, it's not going to happen. I was sounding the alarm. Oh no, you don't think they're actually? Well, we're here. We're
Mhm.
here.
Hey.
They are executing. So
Okay.
what are we going to do as a community to protect ourselves when a lot of the things that we counted on start to fail? You got this terrible budget bill. What are we going to do to protect ourselves in terms of healthcare? What are we going to do to protect ourselves in terms of these people who are itching for a race war? Do people know how to shoot? Do they have guns? Things that we don't want to talk about or acknowledge. We're here. We're in a
Mhm.
different point in this country's
Oh,
existence,
yeah.
and
Hold
we
that
can go
point,
in
Doc.
two different ways. Go ahead.
Hold that point, because you're saying a whole lot. We're
I
trying to
did.
yes, you did, trying to digest this, and sometimes it
I
can be
did. It's
a
a
bit
lot.
frightening. It is a
Montgomery
lot.
bus boycott, that wasn't something
Absolutely.
that happened in a week or a day.
No,
That
no.
took years. Anyway,
Yeah,
let me.
yeah, too. Absolutely. Okay, okay. Attorney, I see you shaking your head and stuff. Chime into this, but I want to throw this out here. How can Congress, take a more active role, and should they take a more active role in solidifying and protections for long-term TPS holders, or is that outside of their wheelhouse, if you will?
Well, I mean, they're the legislators. They're the one that's supposed to make laws, right? So they should be taking an active role. Look, when you say take an active role, that suggests that
Come
they're
on with it.
actually doing
Just come on.
something that's
Come on.
beneficial to anybody, right? Like we would want them to actually just do the damn job that they were sent there to do, right? That would be like a very amazing thing. That would be an amazing thing if they would actually just do their jobs, and they're
Mhm.
not doing that. So I don't know if we could even have any expectations from the people that's elected right now, because like I think they just passed that bill, that crazy bill to give all the money to all the rich people and take all the money from everybody else. And the
Mhm.
trick bag with that bill is that it doesn't go into effect until 2027, right? So what they want to do, because they know a lot of them are going to lose in 26, because people are sick of the nonsense, they're gonna, and if the House or the Senate does flip blue, it's gonna make it seem as though the Democrats are the one that did that, right? We don't want to make it political, but they play a lot of games. at the end of the day, I think we really should absolutely still get rid of them. If they should get rid of them for some different reasons that,
That's
I mean, I
okay.
want to get all into, but we
Hmm.
really, like Vadi said, it's really up to us. But even when I hear this up to us thing, right? And the fact that they're looking to, when she gave the 63 million numbers, and it's like the Latino folks. I want to see where Latino folks are actually really getting more involved and really getting involved in this fight in a way that's
Other than
significant.
TikTok,
You
other,
understand what I'm
other,
saying?
other
Where
than
people
TikTok, I
making
know
jokes
exactly
about
what
it,
you're saying.
right?
Yeah, yeah.
So and I saw this one video where they were saying like Cubans shouldn't be surprised that black folks don't want to help them because they never helped us, right? And yes, we black women, black folks, African American people, we're always on the front line because we know we catch hell when if anything happens. But I do want to see more advocacy on the part of others. We're doing what we can to make a difference in the space we're in, but this absolutely is going to be something where I think the Latino community is going to have to get a grip, realize that white people don't think they're white, and that they need to align themselves with the right folks and get into the fight in a way that's beneficial to everyone.
Okay, let's go to one of our guests. I see Miss Betty Lumpkin. She asked the question: Do you think okay, do you think Black Americans have to really be concerned with ICE because, after all, we're still brothers and sisters? They see us as the same.
I could take a stab at that. So first, I'll say that yes, when they're deporting Black immigrants, they deport Black immigrants. I don't know if you've been paying attention to what's been going on, but they deport first, ask questions later. Even when they know they made a mistake in who they deported, unless you have a crack legal team that's hard for and you're getting a lot of attention, they don't care. They deport you first. There are U.S. citizens that have been deported. I need you to understand that. And I can send you the stories of videos that people have sent of people who have been here for generations who are getting deported. And
Mhm.
I know sometimes, there's this false separation for us as Black people because we live in these countries that try to tell us that we're not the same. And of course, we have our own inter-community squabbles. But when you're Black, right? Malcolm X, descendant of Caribbean folks. Kwame Ture, descendant of Caribbean
Yeah.
folks. So when we talking about Black people, we need to understand what we're talking about. They don't like uppity Negroes. So if you are somebody who doesn't quote unquote know your place, which a lot of Caribbean people don't, right? And a lot of educated people don't, right? And when I say educated, I'm not talking about fancy degrees. When
No.
you know your history and you know that you are a full human being and ain't nobody, regardless of their color, better or worse than you, that's a different kind of education. That's what they call woke, right? And they cannot stand that. That is the
Dottie,
biggest threat to them.
hold that point, Dottie. I want Sandra. Let's back up for a moment.
Mhm.
You were supposed to introduce Dottie. So give us a little bit so folk can know who she is. Those who don't already know, and just give us that little bit that you told me about.
Who,
I
me?
know it. No,
He
Sandra.
wanted me. He wanted me to talk
Oh,
a little bit
Sandra. Yeah,
about you.
yeah, yeah,
Oh,
So,
yeah.
so I'm going to tell you, like Dottie, she's like a powerhouse attorney, right? Has been elected. I think you're terming out, right? In 108, was elected 4 times in the seat. Took out a person that had that job probably for 20, 30, 40, 50 years. A legacy person, and she came in there with her young self, and she came there knocking down doors, doing the work for the community, and the people still mad that she won, right? Still mad that she won.
Mhm.
She was the first Haitian American woman to be the printor. What is that? What's the word for that? What's the word on that? Because I get that word wrong.
let me do it.
Let me get
Let
that
me
word
let me
right.
let me
Let
let
me
me
get that word right.
let me do the short version. Okay. For those who don't know me, I am Dottie Joseph, and it's pronounced Dotsie Joseph. I was born in Haiti, raised in the 305 since I was 3 years old. Okay. Public schools all throughout. I went to some of the best schools, the worst schools Miami-Dade County had to offer. Went to Drew, Miami Norland, all that stuff. Yale undergrad, Georgetown Law. Went and did civil rights litigation, some of which went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and I unapologetically kicked butt. Came back home to serve, became the first Black attorney to work at the city of North Miami Beach, assistant deputy interim city attorney, partner at a law firm, got sucked into running for office. The person that I beat wasn't there for a long time, but I'm not even going to get into that. But here's what y'all need to know.
But he does come from a family of politicians, a whole bunch of them.
He does, but they're not the focus of right now. Right now, our entire community is under attack. And one thing I wanted to correct a little bit about what, not even correct, but expound on what Sandra said. When we're talking about the Latino community, we have to understand that there's a much larger community than what we experience in South Florida. I know in South Florida, we experience a lot of the kind that, quite frankly, are racist. I'm just going to call it like it is. We experience a lot who don't understand that structural racism is a thing. They do not understand, like they bought into the brainwashing because their proximity to whiteness and privilege in South Florida is very different than the rest of the country. If you look, Latinos are fighting back. If you look at LA, if you look in other parts of the country, they are fighting back. And these same Latino Cubans right here used to be the ones that were fighting back. If you remember back in the Elian Gonzalez time period, they were the main ones rioting and doing all that stuff. Those people forgot who they are. I was watching one of our Cuban Congress people talk about how he thought that Alligator Alley was just fine and people are going to be treated just safe. And I understand the frustration that Sandra's talking about, because how are we going to fight for you and you're not even fighting for yourself? Not only you're not fighting for yourself, but you're fighting against us. Okay. And that's what we're dealing with right now. Right now, we have a Cuban Speaker of the House. We have a Cuban who is the Secretary of State. It's crazy. And if they really took a moment to think about it, you would understand that when the president was running the first time and he lost the nominee to somebody who had been the U.S. senator for generations and they picked somebody else over him, that should have been everything they needed to know. But psychologically, when we're talking about the impact of racism on communities, sometimes you think that your proximity to power somehow gives you power as well. And it does not. It does not.
If we can
It just means they're going to get to you. They might get to you a little bit later. Right now, they're getting to you right now. You could close your eyes and pretend like you don't see it and act like ostrich, but they are deporting Cubans. They're deporting Venezuelans from Doral who were like, I will vote for Donald Trump. Well, here you go. This is what you voted for. You're getting it. Right. But not everybody's in that category. So I just wanted to say that.
Well, thank you. And we had a guest on our show before that said that she was from Doral. You remember, Sandra? And she said
you're talking about Laura Kelly. She's actually the chair of the Miami Democratic Party.
Right. She said she wasn't playing that game anymore. But I want to back up to another one of our viewers. If you can bring it down, I think the question was asked by Miss Gordon, Natasha Gordon. She made a comment and a question. There it is right there. And she said, and she did, I told y'all about, I can't see that, Arc Trader? That is who is buying up all the farms that are currently going bankrupt. J.D. Vance and Peter Thickle are major investors. Our food supply has been in trouble for a while. Do we clearly think they keep building diabetes centers just because? Natasha is a writer, right? And some years ago, she wrote in the West Side Gazette, and we're going to revisit this about Chicken and Purdue and some other entities that are all involved with what is transpiring now. But I wanted to put that out there. I do have another question, and I'm trying to do this thing. Has the Supreme Court become too involved in immigration policy making, or is it simply interpreting the limits of the power of the lower courts? I'm sorry. You want me to say it again? Okay, I'll say it again. Has the Supreme Court become too involved in immigration policy making, or is it simply interpreting the limits of lower courts?
So I'll take that to start off. Okay. I don't know that it's that the Supreme Court has gotten too involved in immigration. Is that some people are just doing too much with immigration. That's what's going on. At the state level, we have no business getting involved in immigration. That's a federal issue. But next, y'all's governor wants to be all up in it because he likes the attention. And what I need us to also understand is most of the stuff that they're doing is illegal, and they know that it's illegal. but for them, it's a game, right? There's two things going on. They are able to fundraise off of this whole Alligator Alcatraz. They've been selling stuff, making money off of it, right? So that's one element. Another element of this is this psychological terror. They're trying to terrorize the community. They want people afraid. They want people to leave because that helps them get to their racist end, which is less Black and brown people in this country, right? You're welcome. That's what they're looking for. So as Black people, we know what terrorism feels like. Angela Davis's book, Women, Race, and Class, gets into in a lot of detail. Whenever we started advocating for our rights, whether it's the right to vote or whatever else, here come the terrorists. They want to start hanging crosses. They want to start doing all these things to make us back down. And that's part of what's going on here. So anyway, another thing that's going on in terms of the frequency of these immigration cases is because they're trying to test their limits, and they have people who are already bought and paid for that they know will get certain outcomes. So they are trying to reshape the law. At the same time, we are trying to protect what's left of our Constitution, right? Because all elected officials were sworn to protect the Constitution against all enemies, foreign and domestic. Well, the call is coming from inside the House, right? So this is what we're dealing with right now, in trying to hold on to what's left of our dying democracy and to consider something new, or just give into this. But the reason they're going after immigrants right now, way more than we've seen before, is part of the same fascist thing. It's a pattern that we see across the world, whether you're talking about pre-Nazi Germany, here, other places. What we see is that people they scapegoat some group. The group du jour is immigrants, right? Oh, they're the murderers, they're the this, they're the that. Meanwhile, we got a whole convicted felon as our commander in chief, right? I mean, and I'm not even gonna get into all the things everything that he's accusing people of is actually him. So this is what we're dealing with, but we just got to deal with it.
Okay. Sandra, you got something you want to say on this? Because I want to.
So on that note, so this whole idea that they want all Black and brown people to go, I don't think that's true, because they won't leave us alone, because we won't bother them. Like, if they really don't want to be bothered with us, we don't want to be bothered with them either. But they're really not going to leave us alone, right? Because they know if we're not here, their life isn't the same, right? So yeah, do you want to terrorize you? Do they want to make people maybe more subservient or something like that? I don't know. Maybe that's more the agenda. But the whole idea that they want us all gone, I actually don't believe that. I just don't believe it, because most of us, like, if they don't want to talk to me, I won't be nowhere around them. You know what I'm saying? But they really won't leave us alone. So it's one of those things where they pretend that they don't want you around, but they absolutely do want you around for whatever the reason may be. I think one of the things. Go ahead.
No. When you said that, when you were talking about it, I thought back to Montgomery bus boycott. You know, when them white women say, I ain't gonna clean this house. Y'all better get them back here. So, you know, it's sort of like that.
And or even just when they were like not getting on the bus, they're like, what you mean y'all not getting on the bus? They're like, we're not getting on the bus. Then they forced them to, they're like, no, we're going to put you in jail. You got to get on the bus. They're like, no, I ain't getting on the bus because you want me to sit in the back. I'd rather walk. I'd rather create a taxi service. I'd rather do all those things. They're like, no, get on the bus. So they always act like they don't want you around, and they know that it's total BS, right? Like, it's just total BS.
There's some history that we're going to bring on this show and talk about when it comes to transportation and Blacks owning big buses during that time. But anyway, I see we got our regular host back there backstage, and we want to bring on Perry Busby. What's up, Perry?
Hey, Perry.
You couldn't stay away, could you?
Good evening. Good evening.
And while you get situated, Perry, let me throw in one more thing about what Sandra was just talking about. So I think it's twofold. I think you have the real racist ideologues like the Stephen Millers, who really do believe what they're saying.
No,
I think you
somebody
have
hurt. Wait a minute. Hold on.
what?
I'm going to interrupt you.
Uh-huh.
Somebody hurt Stephen Miller and he's acting out. Okay.
He is.
Ain't nobody that racist and that ridiculous in real life unless somebody broke his heart. So some black girl probably hurt him, broke his heart. He don't want to admit it. And that's why he out here terrorizing everybody. Okay. That
Well,
is so personal that it don't make no sense. You ain't
well, what
wake
about
up
that?
and you was not born that
Well,
way,
we know
sir.
Elon
Somebody
already
hurt
has.
you. We need to find
They
out who
already
she
say
is and
Elon
have
messing
her
with
go
his
talk
parent
to this
wife.
man so he can leave
Oh,
everybody else alone.
well, what about that other crazy lady, the one who said that people were eating each other? What's that crazy? It's a bunch of crazy. What's her
Which one
name?
of them?
No,
No, these
Noam
are
or
all
some.
hurt people acting out right
Yeah,
now. This
yeah,
is all
yeah.
it is. This is a bunch of hurt people
Okay.
acting out. And I don't want to minimize it, but this really what it is. Like it don't make no sense. It's a bunch
Yeah.
of hurt people acting out, and we need to figure out who hurt them so we can truly come to find some solutions to the problems that we find ourselves in right now.
Okay,
I
let's do
mean,
this. I really want to. I want to talk about something that's near and dear to me. That alligator Alcatraz. That stuff right there. Um, Give me your thoughts on that. I got mine. The minute I hear alligators and people being confined, I think of black people and black babies being used as gator bait. So
mhm,
it's really disturbing to me. But let me hear what you
Mhm.
guys got to say about that.
so I got a lot to say about that, but let
Okay.
me let me just finish the last thought about what Sandra said real quick. I want to close that out.
Can you make it
So
real quick? You can do that, Dottie?
yeah, maybe we'll see. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna give you my best effort.
Okay.
Um, you have. I think we're distracted by black, white, immigrant, non-immigrant. I think all of that is a joke. Even the Democrat Republican drama. I think at the end of the day, it's about the super rich and how they want to exploit the working class and our natural resources. They want to exploit human and natural resources for their profit. That's what this is actually all about. And all this other stuff is just to keep us distracted and busy and fighting so that they continue to extract um, labor that used to be free that they want to be free again, right? I think that's what this is all about. So
That's
moving
why all
on.
the Hispanics ain't leaving. That's why all the migrants and immigrants are not leaving because they ain't gonna have nobody to work this land and all of this stuff that they're keeping.
Hmm.
Their place, right? They're trying to say the immigrants are taking their work. What work are they talking about? The work in the fields, right?
Mhm.
That's where they want us. They want us in our quote unquote place. And we are too uppity these days because our place is everywhere. And we have the gall to think that our place is also in the White House. So that's their problem. They're butthurt. Anyway, moving on to your question about alligator. Was that short enough for you? Was
Yeah,
that
you did.
was
You,
that
you
all
did
right?
all right. You did all right.
Okay.
You did all
All
right.
right.
Mhm.
So
Mhm.
Alligator Alcatraz is a hot mess. And it layers so many racial issues. You talked about gator bait. Some people may not even know about gator bait, but that's a real thing. They used to use black children as bait to lure out alligators to
Mhm.
hunt them.
Mhm.
And that's part of where gator bait in UF parlance comes from. That's a real thing. So to see Laura Loomer's tweet about we're going to have however many meals for you, 616 million, 63
Mhm.
million meals for you. That's what that is. And what's crazy is some Hispanic people, particularly Cubans and some Venezuelans and some other ones who have been so brainwashed, don't even understand and make that connection. And
Not even brainwashed, they don't know because they don't
Mhm.
tell people anything. If you're not reading outside the curriculum, you won't know.
some of
Mhm.
them don't know, but some of them did know at some point. Because back in the days, people may not know this, but in Miami, my friends would tell me that they used to have these signs: no NIGGRS, no dogs, and no Cubans, right?
Mhm.
And sometimes it was no Jews. But those we were treated like dogs, like you're not allowed to be here. So those people knew. And it wasn't in the far distant past. I think there's a lot more going on to it than that. I think there's a level of political propaganda, brainwashing that has transpired that has not been countered effectively. So let me tell you what I'm talking about. So the Heritage Foundation and a couple of other super radical right-wing organizations have been investing to the tune of millions of dollars anti-immigrant messaging. Before 10 years ago, people weren't talking about no border crisis. People weren't worried about immigrants in this way. In fact, the last president who passed some kind of meaningful immigration reform was Reagan, right? A Republican. And before that, after that, you had the Bushes talking about different ways and providing ways for amnesty. And it's a completely different discussion now when it comes to immigration. Because right now you have these folks who just are not making those same connections. And I'll tell you one thing, and this is not just about the immigration conversation, but it's about political communication and psychology in general. Your brain can know something to be false without a shadow of a doubt. But if you hear it over and over and over enough, at some point your subconscious starts to believe it's true. So you have people who themselves, their parents, we got a congressman, his parents were undocumented. He's a Cuban congressman right now. You have the Secretary of State whose grandfather came here undocumented and had a deportation order on him. And now he's the one doing the same thing to his community. So at some point, there's a combination of that kind of brainwashing, because that's the propaganda and that's what you hear in your circle all the time. And you don't want to be outside of your circle, right? This is the winning team. You want to be on the winning team. You think the winning team will help you protect yourselves. And it's a lie, but it's a lie that racism teaches us, because we think that by doing that, our proximity to power will somehow protect or save us, but it doesn't. It just delays the inevitable, and you just turn on your community in the meantime, but you don't even see it. These people are like, well, no, I'm better. I got here the legal way, the right way, but they're not even paying attention that these people are here the legal way. People are getting arrested when they're going into their regular check-in appointments. People who are almost citizens, who have done everything right. They don't care.
They don't care.
They don't care.
Perry, I know you came on when you could. I see that Natasha Gordon has a statement. There was a store in Florence, South Carolina that had a sign that said "No dogs" or NIGGRS allowed until it was burned down in 2000. So it appears that the only way to address some of this stuff is to burn it down, but we're not preaching. Get your
So I
mask
want to
on.
say I want to talk about some of the things Dottie talked about, just because it's personal to me. So I'm one of those immigrants that Ronald Reagan helped get a green card. I got my green card. I got my lawful status in the United States because of a Republican administration. I was undocumented in this country for a long time, and I was able to get lawful status because of a Republican administration. So I know that Republicans can be better than this, right? I know this for a fact, right? I came here with a visa. We overstayed. I was going to school, didn't even know I was illegal until a recruiter, Army recruiter, was trying to get me to join the service because I had a high ASVAB score. And he asked me if I had a green card, and I was like, what's that? Right. So, and a Republican gave me the ability and created my path to citizenship. So I know this. That's why I'm just like, Republicans can absolutely be better than they are right now in the state that we're in. We don't need to be here. I'm a living testament of what Republicans can do. And even and at that time, we thought Reagan was a bad president because of the Iran Contra and all of the other things that he was doing, but he was not hateful to immigrants, because not only was there the program that allowed me to get my green card, there was also a farmer program, right? There was a farm program. They used to call it Résidence Jardin. And a lot of people, a lot of farmers out in Immokalee and Belglade and those kind of places, they got their green cards because of a decision that a Republican president made.
Yep.
And that's the reality of America. And that's not a long ago. That was in the 80s that happened. I became a resident of the United States in 1987. I mean, it had a retroactive date to 82, but it was in 1987 that happened.
And Sandra, and you say that I had a neighbor who worked for firearms, alcohol, and tobacco, and they used to go on raids over in Belgrade. Now you had a president who was doing the right thing, but you had citizens over there who had black folk as slaves, and this was in the same time period you're talking about. So we had those who wanted to do right, but you had this mindset that said, hell no. We're going to keep you indentured keep you enslaved as long as we can. Perry, we haven't heard from you, man. What's your thoughts right now?
Well, I've really been just enjoying this as a listener because being here in Arizona, you it's almost like I'm in a sandwich hearing both sides of this when you hear because we get to keep track of what's going on in LA and Southern California. And so when you really begin to hear the local stories, the ones that don't have the high media appeal, uh, what you really begin to hear are communities for the who are facing real distress. Uh, uh, once heard a lady said that their community would never be the same after experiencing their first ICE raid of a neighbor who had been in the community 20 plus years. Um, and so I've heard Representative Joseph and Sandra uh, talk about what we need to do on the community side. And so, what I've been seeing here on the West Coast is communities now starting to band together to, uh, in some cases, become their own defense. And so, as we have these discussions, I know it's always helpful to talk about what's happening, but Representative Joseph, just what are some of the ideas that you think that we really need to begin to start implementing beyond just the legal aspects? Sandra, I saw you on TV. I had Channel 10. I was like, that's the co-host. That's Sandra. So I appreciate the service that you all are doing to people who are experiencing this on the front line. But we need to have village talk. What can the village do? And what does the village need to be focused on at this time? Because I again, for many African Americans, we hear this, there is some level of empathy, but as we all know, there is that divide. That's them. That's the other black folk. And as I say, whenever you go crabbing and you have a net, you catch more than the crabs. You catch a whole lot of other stuff. So let us be cognizant that this net is out. And as the representative says, we can all get caught up because
Mhm.
it's catch
And
now, defend later. So what can we as the village begin to really think about because we have these intrusions coming into our community?
so I want to say one thing before I like go on. So yes, there is like a divide, but some of that is on the Caribbean community. Like one of the things I have to constantly remind myself is that every person of color that's in the United States is standing on the shoulders of African Americans. All of them, right? People from the Caribbean, Asians, and Indian, whoever you are, every single one of you are here and you're standing on the shoulders of African Americans. And I think one of the things that we don't do enough is me as an immigrant. You know, I present black, I'm an immigrant. We don't give credit to African American people in the opportunity and the space that they've created for all of us to be here to do all of the things that we're doing, right? So I can see why they can be mad sometimes. They be like, listen, we done did all this for y'all, and then y'all out here disconnected, acting like we ain't contributed nothing or we're not contributing much, right? Because that is a whole psychological warfare that's going on with African American people that are in the United States. Because imagine you're in your home and you're being mistreated, right? That's problematic, right? And not only are you being mistreated by the people who brought you here, who you were growing up with, but you got newcomers coming in here talking to you sideways, right? So we understand that. So I like if I don't say it enough, and I want to make sure that I said here, we are all here and we're all standing on the shoulders of African American people. And I truly appreciate all that. And I respect and I honor that and I remember that and I don't forget it, right? Bobby had originally asked us about this alligator Alcatraz, and then I'll give an idea of some of the things we can do. Just the name itself is already having impact because I'm in the space and I work with detained folks, right? And I'm telling you, they're like, listen, I'd rather take an order of deportation, leave this place before they transfer me into that facility. And I'm telling you, that's a real conversation that's being had. And people are just saying, like, you know what? I want to stay and fight, but I don't want to end up in no alligator Alcatraz. So they're like, it's having an immediate impact, and it's only been around like a week, right? Like they just opened it up a couple of days ago. It's a facility that they built in 8 days that's already leaking. They got all kind of problems, and people are saying, nope, I'd rather leave than get transferred into that place. And the reality of them getting transferred there is real because the facilities that they're in are already overcrowded, because every detention facility in the United States is overcrowded and it has too many people. So just it's already having impact because people are saying, I'd rather get out of here than deal with that. And I can't say I blame them.
Absolutely. Okay.
So the only thing I'll add about Alligator Alcatraz, just so people know, is the authority through which the governor is supposedly acting is an emergency authority that was granted to him through the legislature. So there's two ways to stop the legal authority. One is to have the legislature rescind it. That's probably not going to happen. And the second is legally. There's litigation pending right now, filed by the Everglades Foundation and a host of other environmental organizations. And just so you know, these organizations have like a 90% success rate before the Supreme Court. And there were a number of things that should have been done that were not done in before they could even do this Alligator Alcatraz thing, right? And the mayor of Miami-Dade County had sent a letter requesting information. Lots of legislators had reached out to get some additional information, and the administration has not responded. This has been really kind of pushed by the current attorney general, who you may or may not know we didn't elect. He's somebody that the governor appointed, and he's also somebody who has been leading a lot of the fraudulent stuff that's happening with Hope, Florida. That's a whole other discussion. But the point is, these people aren't necessarily playing legally the way that they should, right? The courts have been giving them certain rulings as it relates to immigration, and the attorney general himself is the one being who's obfuscating the law. So I need you to understand that we're working in different times. So the normal things that we would do are not the things that will be as effective. Protesting is nice, sure, but these people don't pay attention to protesting, right? In case you haven't noticed, we're living, Sandra talked about the Republican administration that gave her citizenship. And I could tell you about the Republican administration that fought for Black people, that gave us the 13th, 14th, and 15th Amendment, right? But we are living in a completely different time since the Hales-Tyndon, compromise. And even now, the Republicans of today are not the Republicans of yesterday. And I've been in office. This is my 7th year in serving in the legislature. And I can tell you it's night and day different from the Republicans who I started with to the Republicans who are serving with me today. They are not the same. These people, with a few exceptions, in general, do not care. And I don't care what you say to my face and tell me, yeah, I'm sorry, all that stuff behind it. What matters is your vote. What matters is the thing that actually impacts people. And every last one of these people, at the state level or even at the federal level, if you look at the budget bill that just passed, they knew what they were doing. There's no question that they knew what they're doing, but they did it anyway. Why? And what's our response? Okay, carry on.
Okay, listen up. We're at the top of the hour. As a matter of fact, we're going a little over. So we can just wind this up and give us a last minute, 30-second plug, Dottie. 30 seconds on what we can do to help us come out of this.
30-second plug.
No.
Well, you first. Let me think about it. What can we do?
Okay. So there are things that we can do. So people who are supporters or have family members that are immigrants, you need to get some information in order for you could help them, right? So we're doing these things that are called like next steps. Like we're doing these town halls that's called next steps. And we're not trying to get a whole bunch of immigrants to come, because I don't want to be in an event where there's an ICE raid. So we want the people who are residents and citizens of the United States to come, get the information and take it back, right? So you don't have to be an immigrant or a TPS holder to come. So just check out our social media. We're posting the flyers. Come to one of those next step town halls so you can get information on what you can do. Because we have to get people, they got to put plans in place. Because some people are going to get deported. It's no ifs and buts about it. Some people are going to get deported. You got to wrap your head around that. You got to make arrangements for your children if you have one. You have to make arrangements about your bank accounts, your houses, and all of those types of things. So you got to get powers of attorneys in place, maybe get some guardianship papers drawn up, but you got to wrap yourself around the what's going to happen, right? But the first thing we're telling people to do is consult with an attorney. Don't not the ones, some of the ones on TikToks are good, but ain't no way for you to know that. So we need you to consult with an attorney for you to get a realistic picture of what your immigration status looks like. And then the word that we're using is that you need to invest in an attorney, because people don't like to pay lawyers, but it's an investment in your future. Because if you don't do it and you don't do it right, you can find yourself in a far worse situation than if you just invested that money to get somebody to really help you navigate this landscape. Because immigration law today is not what it was, not even just last year at the end of the Biden administration. It's a whole different beast right now. So we want people to come to the Next Step Town Hall so they can get that information and disseminate it. And we want people who are undocumented to get a consultation, speak to an attorney, find out what your realistic picture is. And then anyone that's a lawful permanent resident of the United States, you need to also consult with an attorney and apply for citizenship if you're eligible. Now, there's some people, I'm going to tell you no, because you might have a crime or you probably travel too much and you're going to put yourself in a worse situation. So we want you to get a consultation, but all lawful permanent residents.
Okay, we lost her. So, okay, State Rep, there's a young man that asked, and we need to get Sandra to put that information in the chat box so he can get it.
Hold on, let me make sure.
So
You're back.
Okay, I'm back on. So anybody that's a lawful permanent resident of the United States, that's properly known as having a green card. We need you to have a consultation, invest in an attorney, and become a citizen, because that lawful permanent resident status does not have the types of protections that it used to have. Because understand, if you have what they call the green card and you travel outside the United States, when you go to the airport, when you're trying to come back in, you're asking for permission to come back in. And a lot of people don't know that. You're asking for permission to come back to the United States, and they can tell you no. So if you're a lawful permanent resident, apply for citizenship. I know that was more than 30 seconds. I'm sorry, Bobby, but I wanted to get that out there.
That's quite all right. Okay, there was something that came across. Yeah, Sandra, is that Rodley? And I might be pronouncing his name wrong. He's asking for information about those town halls or those sessions that you're mentioning. He wants some information.
So my name is that's my name on Facebook. Sandra Cherfrere is my name on Facebook. You could send me a message or a friend request, but I post them, and it's actually public. So I post them on my page. I think the next one is either the 8th or the 9th. So we have 2 next week. So if you check on my Facebook page, as soon as we get the flyers up, you'll see it. Or just message me and I'll get you the information.
Madam Doty?
Okay. So if I'm giving you, am I getting an echo?
Yes.
I might get something. Can you hear me okay, Bobby?
We getting a lot of feedback as well.
They both say that they're both.
My mic is off.
You guys are too close.
Yes.
Yeah, you guys are too close. Sandra, turn your mic off, and Dottie, you come back on.
Here we go.
Yeah.
So 30 seconds. So she talked about her name. So if you could mind, just Dottie with 1 T, i.e. Joseph. On Instagram, I try to post as much important information as possible. There are lots of organizations that are giving free legal consultations. I cannot emphasize what Sandra said enough. Get a real evaluation for your own situation. Everybody's different. Don't try to use just generic information for your situation. There may be relief that you don't even know that you have. And now is the time to make sure that you can get that in order. Make a plan for yourself. Once you make a plan, worst case scenario, if you do get deported, if you do get whatever, what is your plan? Do you have somebody to check in with? Do you have a power of attorney? Who's going to take care of things for you? So talk to an attorney, make a plan. Now, separate from all the immigration, and for those who are interested, we need to start thinking about ways to fund ways to protect our community for a bail fund, right? We do bail funds for, Black moms. I know that a friend of mine, Gerlene Joseph, has a bail fund for Black immigrants. We have folks who are thinking about doing a bail fund here, but that's a way that the community can help pitch in terms of defraying some of the expenses that we know are going to be coming, right? That's two. Another thing that you want to think about, separate from the immigration stuff, just us as Black people, recognize what period that we're in. This is our time that we need to do some of what Harry was talking about and get involved in some community protection and to plan ahead. For the super cerebral folks, I would recommend a couple books. One of them is called On Tyranny, and it talks about the fall of democracies and getting into kind of where we are in this country's history, which is not unique. I know it feels like it's unique because we're Americans, but this is happening around the world. Fascism is taking root in a lot of places, and we've seen it fought back. South Korea just fought back against some really significant things. So there's some lessons there, right? But On Tyranny is a book. It talks about not obeying in advance. It talks about a lot of things of this is the time for us to step up together, because the stronger the more we are collective, the stronger we all are, right? It's when you're off in the cut and getting cut off individually, that's when you're more vulnerable. Thinking about how to develop within your community, how to organize your family. Do you have a plan? There's some people who are out here planning for a race war, right? Do you know how to shoot? Do you have ammunition? Do you have a gun? Like stuff that I wish I would not have to say, but we're in a very different time in this country's history. In the past couple months, maybe even year, we found a lot of people being hung off of trees, lynching style, right? The media is not talking about that, but it's happening within our community. There's somebody here in Florida, out in Orlando, all across the country. If you just Google it, these people, things are happening, and we cannot afford to not get ready. And I'm not trying to scare anybody.
No.
If I am scaring you, I want you to know that our ancestors have been through worse and they have made it through. And just the fact that you exist in this country right now is a testament of people, the embodiment of people who refused to die. I need you to know that. Whether you were dropped off in Haiti or you're dropped off in the United States or dropped off in another place, we are all dealing with the same oppressive system that literally kidnapped us and brought us here. And we're trying to claim it as our own, but we just need to understand what country we're dealing with, right? It was built on the enslavement and murder of first indigenous people, then Black people. This is what we're dealing with. And we've come a long way, but in the past couple months, year, they have undone a lot of the advances, or are trying to undo and have effectively undone some of the advancements they have taken over 60 years to attain. So I need us to be eyes wide open about what we're dealing with. Buck up, put your big girl, big boy draws on, because it's time. Like, we ain't got time to play no more. Like, we're here. So that's it.
Whoa, Mr. Busby.
I love it. I love that. No, that ditto to everything. I don't need to add anything to that. She said it all. We are in a different place.
Okay. Absolutely. We have to know who we're in the foxhole with. As the show comes to an
Be on
end.
here with me.
Okay, as the show comes to an end, I want to thank our special guest, State Representative Dottie Joseph, and our host, Attorney Sandra C. and Perry Busby. As I wrote in my article this week, Alligator Alcatraz is a swamp of injustice. We've seen this before. There's nothing new under the sun. I want to leave you with this. This country, and this is what I wrote. This country.
We're doing a show, Wilmington.
Okay, Sam.
Sorry, we still at a whole town hall, y'all.
I know. This country cannot call itself a democracy while building open air prisons for asylum seekers in wildlife infested wetlands. It cannot claim moral authority while normalizing state sanctioned suffering. And it cannot claim to have learned from its past when it repeats the same architecture of separate and unequal, dressed in new political language. And we shall never forget what Frederick Douglass said on his 4th of July speech. What have I or those I represent to do with your national independence? Are there the great principles of political freedom and of natural justice embodied in that Declaration of Independence extended to us? Now is the time for us to come together collectively from across all boundaries to stand unified and fight for the causes that says we hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men and women are created equal, and that they are endowed with their creator with certain unalienable rights, that among them are these: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. If you ain't willing to die for something, then you need to move and get out of the way. Good night. God bless you all, and thank you so very much.
Thank